Welcome into K-State Online. I am Mason Voth. That is Drew Galloway. And pretty fitting that we talked about this. Was it just yesterday or maybe 2 days
Yeah.
ago? Uh, do we think K-State was done in the transfer portal? And you said, I think there's probably one more, seems to be where it's going to go. And what do you know, Drew? We are here less than 24 hours later, and K-State has one more added to this class. It is George Fitzpatrick, another offensive lineman addition for K-State, transferring from Ohio State. 2 years of eligibility remaining. So if you go and look and you see him listed as a junior, don't worry. He's got 2 years left to play. Just for whatever reason, Ohio State, despite acknowledging that he redshirted his true freshman year, they still listed him as a junior. But he's a guy that has that extra year tacked on. So, what does this one mean for K-State? Because this is the second edition from Ohio State. It's another guy that could possibly play tackle for them immediately next year. So, give us your point of view on George Fitzpatrick becoming a Cat.
Yeah, big rundown is that this means that the transfer class, at least for now, it is complete. I still am unsure about what the spring window will look like really for anyone. So I'd say it could be pretty likely that George Fitzpatrick might be the last transfer edition, just period. But it really solidifies the offensive line because K-State needed another tackle that was eligible to or able to play next season and can be a starter at right tackle, could be a depth piece at right tackle if somebody else came along. But you just needed an older body that is able to go. And kind of like Jaden Rowe, kind of like Jay Sean Ross, George Fitzpatrick was recruited pretty hard by K-State out of high school, and then he really exploded. And after that, K-State didn't really have a chance to land him. But again, you get the familiarity. George Fitzpatrick played in the national championship game on Monday and flew to Manhattan on Tuesday for his official visit. So kind of that familiarity of what is going on at K-State, I think, helped them. I think Mississippi State was also trying to get involved with him as well. So it's a big win for K-State because it's the last transfer that you needed. This was kind of the one thing that was keeping K-State from getting to that A- range for me was kind of just that missing second tackle that you're like, okay, this is a guy that can play next year. And unlike Brandon Snee, who I think has really high potential, I think George Fitzpatrick probably has a lower floor, but also and still has a high ceiling, but probably a little bit lower than Brandon Snee. But because of that higher floor, George Fitzpatrick is probably able to start right away. Where like Brandon Snee, I think we'll have to see how it progresses throughout the offseason. But this was a guy that Ohio State really wanted to keep, I think, from doing a little bit of research on that, and played almost 100 snaps at right tackle this season for Ohio State, which, again, doesn't seem like a lot, but backup offensive linemen just aren't going to get to play a whole lot for a lot of schools because you want continuity along your offensive line and you want your best five out there for as much as you possibly can.
Yeah, I think this is another good addition. This fits into what K-State was looking for, kind of what we've talked about, where you go and you look for these guys that they had the pedigree at one point, and when you're in a room with a bunch of other really, really talented guys, you could still maybe have something that could be serviceable to somebody, but it's going to be tough to do it at Ohio State because they're always looking for. I mean, they're looking for first round picks on their offensive line. Is essentially how the thinking would be there. So I think this is another good pickup for K-State. Now, you mentioned kind of the long-term impact of this addition for Fitzpatrick, and he seems like an immediate guy. Some of the other guys that have been brought in may not have as much of an immediate impact. Where on the offensive line, because tackles, what we talk about, is George Fitzpatrick the right tackle, or do you think he is a candidate to be the left tackle next season?
He's probably a right tackle to me. I think that in an ideal world, that's where he would settle in at. Because I just think that Snee, John Pastore, and even Gus Hawkins are probably a little bit more athletic than Fitzpatrick is and just have more length to play left tackle. But if there's a scenario where like Gus Hawkins and George Fitzpatrick are your two best tackles to get your best five out on the field, you'd probably have George Fitzpatrick take that left tackle spot because he's older and has been around a little bit more. Because you probably want Gus Hawkins when he first gets on the field to play on the right side, because there's a little bit less pressure along the right side than being that blind side tackle. And especially because you think that Avery Johnson is going to keep progressing and progressing and progressing. You probably don't want a younger tackle on that left side. But I think that it's a very safe right tackle option. I think that there's nothing wrong with having somebody that's safe, like have a higher floor, but probably a little bit lower of a ceiling. Because you look at what the tackle options were next year, and even with Brandon Say included, there was kind of a lot of question marks because you haven't really seen John Pastore get to play a lot because of injuries. Gus Hawkins is super young. Brandon Snee, I think, can be a dude, but I don't know if that's a guy that you want to rely on next season, like right away at one of your tackle spots. So Fitzpatrick is just a stable force. And I think we'll let you kind of see what you have at left tackle, because I imagine that it will be kind of that open competition between Snee, Hawkins, and John Pastore.
Okay, so that was going to be the next spot that I went, is just if we bring this out in the full outlook, if you had to make the call today, what is the first set of 5 offensive linemen on the field against Iowa State in Ireland next year? And I'll give you a chance to think about that, Drew, because somebody just said the word Ireland. So I got to, bring up the fact that the Cats are going to Ireland and they are going to be facing Iowa State in the 2025 Aer Lingus College Football Classic. And if you want to be there, you want to get premium game tickets, elite hospitality packages, an exclusive K-State welcome experience, and so many other things that will enhance not only your trip over to Ireland, but also your experience while you're there. You should go to cats2ireland.com so you are ready for it, because we are officially 7 months away from kickoff between K-State and Iowa State. At this time, 7 months from now, we will be in Dublin and we will be discussing either a K-State win or a really, really crappy way to start the 2025 season, and not looking forward to a flight back that will take ages going on. But don't worry about any of that, because K-State's going to win. And even if they don't, most of you will be over there with family and friends, and you'll have a good time regardless. So make sure you get it all booked up and taken care of now, cats2ireland.com. So I gave Drew his time to think, and we'll get the Ireland fun fact to close out the show. Don't let me forget. But I want to know right now what you think the first set of 5 on the field that offensive line looks like next year for K-State.
I'd say right now, before we kind of get into winter workouts and spring football and kind of hearing the buildup going into Ireland, that the first 5 will be John Pastore at left tackle, Andrew Leingang at left guard, Sam Hecht at center. This is where it's tough, because we don't know if Taylor Portier or Hadley Panzer will get a waiver to be able to play. I'd say it's probably less likely on Panzer, but probably a little bit more likely on Portier. But I will still go with Amos Talalele at my right guard right now, and then George Fitzpatrick at right tackle. So you kind of get a little bit of the best of both worlds. Pastore and Leingang have been in the program for a long time, haven't been full-time starters yet. Sam Hecht, I thought, was really, really good this past season. And then 2 transfer additions that I think can be a really good stabilizing force for K-State.
All right. Then the other thing, building off of that, you mentioned earlier, you think that the Fitzpatrick addition pushes K-State to kind of that A- territory for what they did in the transfer portal. The final breakdown on K-State and the portal, at least to what we think it is going to be, 17 players entered the transfer portal for K-State. K-State ends up with 14 commitments out of the transfer portal, and we went over yesterday where most of those came from. Now Fitzpatrick adds another Ohio State addition. And just, I'll do this real quick for comparison's sake to show how K-State made out of the portal. So K-State got commitments from schools like Oklahoma, Purdue, Ohio State, Boston College, West Georgia, USC, Arizona, Nebraska, South Alabama, Wagner, New Mexico, West Florida, and Ohio State. For comparison, the players that are already committed that left K-State ended up at Washington, Arizona, Buffalo, Bowling Green, Jackson State, UConn, Western Kentucky, Louisiana Tech, Northwest Missouri State, Old Dominion, New Mexico, and Emporia State. So just to showcase what K-State did there, what they lost, while there were a couple that, I think people would have liked to have seen Trey Spivey be back because of what it could turn into. And maybe Carver Willis would have been fine to have back. Really, you didn't lose a lot of guys that were impacting the team currently and didn't necessarily have a clear path to impacting the team anytime soon, if ever. Whereas you brought in guys that are, again, there are no sure things in the transfer portal. You and I have talked about this throughout the day, but you can get guys that are closer to being there, or players that are at least going to give you something. K-State got a lot of players that at their worst, I think, are going to give you something. And at their best, you're going to be able to turn them into, a player like Easton Kilty last year, who was an all Big 12 offensive lineman for you at left tackle. And K-State has had success with transfers in the past. Now, these linebackers, we talked about that. They're trying to buck a trend. That's about the one spot K-State hasn't had success at yet in the portal. But K-State made some nice moves. And we talk about it so much in recruiting now. Don't worry so much about the stars, even though they're fun to look at sometimes. The best thing to do is go and look at what a guy got offer-wise. And we've seen K-State over the years become more competitive, where you go, oh, that's a Big 12 school, that's an ACC school, that's a Big 10 school. All these either peer institutions or higher than that. And for what K-State did in the portal versus what they lost, I think you go and look at where they came from versus players where they're going, and you think K-State did a nice job here, and you can grade it out that way. And also, you can go look at just some of the other ways that On3 has tried to classify the recruiting rankings for the transfer portal, and K-State's made out pretty good.
Yeah, I would even say that it's not even like looking at the offers or where they came from in the transfer portal. For me, it's more about like, what do you do and what did you do at your old school? What is K-State planning to do with you? Like, it's more about like potential roles and kind of what that brings. Because like I've talked about on here before, like we talked earlier today, there's probably like 4 to probably 8 to 10 guys in the transfer portal that are like, okay, yep, that's a sure thing. And even some of those guys that you would think would be sure things, like, you don't feel great about. Like, everybody wanted Casey Concepcion, me included, but you kind of look at what he did this year, and there wasn't a great situation, but the production really dipped. You look at guys like Jackson Arnold that was in transfer portal. That's not a sure thing, even though he was one of the guys that was pretty highly ranked. So nothing is really a sure thing in the portal, or else everybody would be able to do well on the transfer portal. And I think that it's a different sport, obviously, but like, look at what basketball has done this season. Like, nothing is a sure thing. It's more about what you bring and what does the school that you're going to bring and what can they do to help bring you along. But I think this is a good portal class. Scott Wildcat now has a poll on the board that has had some interesting results of everybody kind of grading out what they think that the transfer portal haul is. And I just did some of the calculations on it. Everybody is kind of in that same like B+, A- territory right now as we're recording this. There's been, I think, 114 now votes that are in that A range and 120 that are in the B range. So everybody seems pretty pleased. And I think that the general consensus is that on paper, this is probably the best transfer portal class that K-State's had in the Chris Kleiman era.
Yeah, that absolutely. And you go and look at the On3 team portal rankings, which, again, this isn't necessarily which class is the best. It's in terms of how a team improved its overall team talent, or stayed the same or declined during the transfer window. So it's pretty number heavy. More guys, you probably improved your class by a significant margin. But K-State's 20th in the On3 transfer rankings. Teams immediately ahead of them are Baylor and Kansas. Baylor pretty comparable to K-State because the Bears only added 12 during the portal cycle. K-State added 14, whereas you look at a team like Kansas, they added 23 guys, and their P rating, which that's the performance score that On3 puts on them to kind of analyze and measure a team's production during the transfer process. KU's P rating ends up being 67.74. K-State's is a little bit higher than that at 70.54 coming out of the 14 guys that they added. So that is where you kind of go and look and see they did the work that they needed. K-State is not a school that had like a ton of massive needs that they needed to address to boost this thing up and bring in a lot more talent. They kind of already had that on their roster. And then you think it's tough to add more talent to your team if you already have, a good starting point. And that's where some of the differences are for, like a team like Texas Tech. And you look at them, they had to combat losing a lot of different things. And they are number one in the On3 portal rankings for what they were able to do. The average that they brought in was 81.77. Out was 64.40. So they got a lot better in terms of how people actually view their roster. Now the question is, are they going to do anything with it as they kind of wait to see how that ends up working out? But overall, I thought K-State did a nice job here. And if they're done, certainly was a good outcome for them. Now we just have to wait to see how it looks on the field. That's why I'd give it a B+. I thought they did really well. I'm pleased with most of what we've seen from them, but I just don't know that in the moment you can give a transfer class anything higher than something in the B range, because they could all turn out to be busts, or it could be an A+, and you could have brought in the best group of transfers any team has ever seen. It's such a mystery, and we won't know. Really not even that Iowa State game. It's going to take us getting a little deeper into the season to figure it out. But K-State did a good job. They did about as well as I think that they could have during this process, getting some guys that they had to battle some bigger schools for. They had to battle some deeper pockets for. And they tried. They tried to be involved for guys that had talents or suitors of a certain level that K-State was going to have a tough time matching. They gave it their best effort, wasn't able to come through. But overall, really good stuff from Chris Kleiman and everybody that was doing the transfer portal work for K-State.
Yeah, I think that this will be a good portal class. And what is fun about a lot of these portal guys is that they are multiple year guys. So that's something to keep in mind as well.
Yeah. All right. Ireland fun fact time. What do you got for us today?
Honestly, today's is kind of lame.
Real quick, I do want to apologize. Yesterday, I did get my my United Kingdom thing wrong. Scott Wildcat always keeping me honest when I get something like that messed up. After I didn't even think about it. I was like, yeah, if I wasn't kind of half-assing the way that I threw it out there, and I had stopped to think about it more, I knew that it was that way. That is the issue there. That's the whole Rory McIlroy, and then obviously Rory's not the only one that deals with it. It's much bigger than sports, but yes, I knew it. I just did not verbalize it correctly. And I was, because again, I didn't really care in the moment. Sorry, Irish people, Northern Irish people. I was just, trying to educate the people softly, but yeah. And I mean, that would get me injured in a significant way if I made that mistake 7 months from now. So I don't plan on doing that. I was wrong yesterday, and it is Northern Ireland that is attached to the United Kingdom. They are not doing their own thing like Ireland is. So good luck to everybody on whatever cause they're trying to fight for in that battle. I think relations are a lot better now. It's not as bad as it once was. But
today's fun fact is that Ireland's national emblem is the harp. And that will be what's on the passport cover, and all Irish coins, by the way.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so that makes a little bit more sense for the whole Guinness thing.
Yes,
because then the harp is in the Guinness logo. So, all right. Any reason why the harp is such a big Ireland thing?
I could not find why, but we can use that for another fun fact if I figure out why.
Yeah, I'm looking up real quick. This is just what Google immediately inserts. So once again, this is half-assed Irish history and research. The harp has been a symbol since the 13th century. We don't care. featured on Anglo-Irish coinage in 1534. So it's been on coins for a long time. United Irishmen adopted the harp as their insignia in 1791. It's been the emblem of the Irish Free State since 1922.
All I got is that it symbolizes pride and tradition.
Yeah, that's what I see. Folklore, literature, mythology. Screwing up saying literature is very funny. And then, yeah, the harp's bell-like sounds are part of Ireland's identity. So,
Oh,
cool.
there you go.
All right. I don't know that I've ever been somewhere where the harp has been played in front of me. So maybe
I don't think that I have either.
Supposedly a beautiful instrument, but as we all know, I don't really respect instruments all that much, and doesn't really matter to me. So the only musical instruments I want to hear in Ireland are the sweet sounds of the pride of Wildcat land, Drew.
Oh,
So
there you go.
there you go. Yeah, look at that. Look, Mason Voth supporting a band. Who would have thought that we'd ever see it? We'll get out of here. That was us talking George Fitzpatrick, the latest addition for K-State, and everything else that comes in with him becoming a Wildcat. The offensive line getting stronger, K-State basically closing up shop in the transfer portal, and then also what things might look like moving forward. And we'll be back again tomorrow. We'll have a lot of different things tomorrow to touch on, so it'll be pretty similar to the show we did earlier in this week, where we're just all over the place, bouncing around, getting things taken care of, but a lot of different things that we can hit on. And then it'll be game day again, Saturday, back with some of these Wednesday to Saturday turnarounds. We didn't have many of those the last 2 years, not many Wednesday games, but they are back in full force in the Big 12. So we will be live again on Saturday evening after K-State and West Virginia from Bramlage Coliseum. We appreciate everybody that watched yesterday. Thought it went well, so we look forward to doing it again, and appreciate everybody watching this video today, and also after this heading over to On3, finding KStateOnline.com, and reading every single word that Drew, DY, and occasionally myself write over there. And if you're not doing it, I appreciate you watching this video, but do us a solid. Go check out KSO. Become a member. If you're not, you will absolutely not regret it. And that way you get more terrible Irish research from me. Drew's doing great work. I'm screwing it up for y'all. We are out of here. Back again tomorrow to close out the week.